Alright, here we go. Let's do another video on this Savage Impulse. Again, focusing on the trigger. And what I'd like to do is actually, first I'm gonna compare this to another Savage that I have. So let me grab that. This is Model 12 in 22250. And I think I've had this, I don't know, since 2003, 4, thereabouts, maybe a little bit later. I don't actually know for sure. So it's good to mention that because what I'm going to point out is some of the what I see as flaws of this this Accutrigger, and I will admit that I don't have newer Savages, other models other than the Impulse. So I'm not sure. Maybe the Savage fixed these things. Maybe they're different on other models. I don't know. So this is just a comparison to my, 20-year-old Model 12. But I always did like this trigger, the Accutrigger. I think the Accutrigger was actually kind of new when I bought this thing, but it was always very light, crisp. Love the trigger, but it does have some problems. Number one being that, so you have this little safety blade and then like the main trigger shoe. And what can happen is, I'll try to show this. If you pull on just the main trigger shoe without depressing the safety blade, you can get it to I don't want to say fire, but you can get it to trip. And when you do that, like this blade, I can't even move this anymore. It's just stuck there, and you have to cock it again, and then you're ready to go again. But that when you do that, like the gun will not fire. This because this safety blade it's in the way of, I don't know what, something in there, so that it won't allow you to actually fire the gun if that happens. So yeah, that seems like a safety thing. So what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is if you're wearing heavy gloves, you're out, maybe coyote hunting in the winter, anywhere we have heavy gloves, if you are not pressing this all the way, pressing this safety blade all the way, you can actually, just by trying to fire the gun, maybe your glove is bulky and it hits this part a little unevenly, and you can actually trip it like that when you go to shoot, and you just get a click. Nothing happens. This has actually cost my brother a coyote. He has a similar model, and he went to fire. It's that exact scenario. We're out coyote hunting. It's like, maybe 0 or, pretty cold. So we're bulked up, got big bulky gloves, and coyote comes in, he goes to shoot it, and all he gets is a click. And not knowing what the heck is going on, of course he jacks the shell out and another one in, and I think he even clicked again. So that's kind of a problem. And what I wanted to show mainly is that this Impulse, the Savage Impulse, does not suffer that same problem. Let's get this so you can see it a little bit better. As you can see, same kind of design, at least it looks like it is. You got the safety blade and the main trigger, but it actually is a quite a bit different design. Let's see, same cocked. Of course, we make sure that it's not loaded. But I can pull on this main trigger shoe as much as I want, as hard as I want. It doesn't move. It will not move at all until you depress this blade. So there's no way that you can, no matter what kind of glove or anything else you got on, there's no way that you can pull this part and trip the trigger without disengaging the safety blade. So that's cool. They got that part fixed. The other issue that I have with the old Model 12 here is, I'm not even sure what you would call this, but it has a tendency, if you run the bolt hard, it has a tendency to spring something inside the trigger that also blocks the trigger. So, you know, kind of like pulling on the side of the trigger shoe does, is it'll actually trip the thing. It won't fire because it's the safety blade, but it'll trip the thing, and you know, you won't be able to fire it without cocking it again. So, and this, I'll admit, this happens when, or it happens more frequently due to a couple factors. The more you have the trigger weight turned down, these Accutriggers are adjustable. This little tool, you can turn, I think you got to take it out of the stock for this one, but you can turn the trigger weight down, which is great for target shooting or shooting smaller targets, really trying to focus on that trigger squeeze. But the more you turn that down to a lower weight, the more likely it is to happen. And then also, the harder you run the bolt, the more likely it is to happen. So let's see if I can get it to do it. Oops, that's not it. So you do it just by running the bolt hard and kind of slam the, get my hand out of the way, slam the bolt down hard. And now, yeah, I did it there. I don't know if the camera will pick it. You can definitely hear the difference because there's like an extra clang when that happens. You can hear the difference in person, but the main thing is, like, look, my trigger is now locked. Gun did not fire when you did that, but the trigger's locked, and now I gotta cock it again to free that up and actually shoot. So if you got this thing turned down real light, which I love, a really light trigger, you know, 1 to 2 pounds is great. You can run into this problem. I'll do it again here. So all I'm doing, I'm just running the bolt. You know, if I'm out shooting, I'm coyote hunting, I get excited, I shoot, I gotta run the bolt. I'm running a little bit hard and slam it down hard, and there it goes. Did it again. We'll do it. I'll show that, like, it doesn't happen every time. So if I just run the bolt like this, kind of normal, like, it's fine. A little bit harder, still good. Still good. There, well, that one actually didn't do it. There, really slammed it. There we go. Now I did it. So you gotta run it pretty hard. Of course, I've actually used to have this trigger turned down a little bit lighter weight, and because I was having that problem, I turned it back up a bit, so it happens less often, or you have to slam it harder to get it to do it. But still a problem. You know, you're out shooting prairie dogs, you shoot one, you jack another shell in quick, you slam the bolt down, and you go to shoot, and you can't do it, and you can't pull the trigger. So there's another problem with this particular model of Accutrigger. The impulse back up here. I mess with this quite a bit, slamming it around, and I can't make this do it, this trigger and this action. So still good. Really hammering on it, and you know, it's really good that it does not do that, because the straight pull action, you kind of got to run it a little bit harder than you would a standard bolt. So let's really slam that thing. Nope, still good. Still good. I don't know if you can tell the force that I'm putting into this thing, but I'm really hammering on it. Still good. So there we go, another improvement. You know, it's quite, I haven't really got both triggers out in analyze them side by side, but we can tell that, you know, even though it kind of looks the same with the trigger shoe and the little blade in the middle, it is completely different trigger. And let me show you. So we're talking about that first problem. This has got mechanism here, as you can see, like when you depress this, the safety blade, as I call it, I'm guessing it probably has a different name, but when I depress that, it actually moves this whole thing out of the way and allows you to then push the trigger up into that notch and fire. So pretty cool design. You know, like I said, I don't know any other, if you know, if possible they fixed the other issues that I have with my Model 12 the very next year, and it's a non-issue, but for sure it's not a problem in this Savage Impulse. So it's a great rifle to shoot. Now that I got the trigger weight turned down quite a bit, you can see my other video on that, but I turned the trigger weight down quite a bit and got it below 2 pounds. I think it's actually just over 1 pound, and I think that's going to help out quite a bit for target shooting, trying to shoot small groups, shooting prairie dogs, and should be pretty cool. This rifle's a lot of fun to shoot, and of course that's just, as far as features on this thing, that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg, and I may get into some other things later, but for now, excellent trigger, and we'll look forward to doing something else with this thing pretty soon.